on the road, in the gym, at a coffee house. No matter where you listen, this is Prevention Perk. I'm Steve Miller with Mid-America PTTC. It's time to perk up our prevention efforts. Our guest today is Carlton Hall, President and CEO of Carlton Hall Consulting. He has been providing intensive substance abuse prevention focused and community problem-solving services to the nation for 25 years, with successful achievements in South Africa, Ghana, Bermuda, Kenya, and others. Carlton spent 12 years with the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America, CADCA. Currently, his team of consultants provides executive training and technical assistance support to the Southeast PTTC Region 4. Additionally, Carlton sits on several boards of directors, including the National Alliance for Drug Endangered Children. Welcome to the Prevention Perk, Carlton Hall.
Man, I'm happy to be here. So yeah, let's get it going.
Well, let's talk about, my first question always is, how in the world did Carlton Hall one day decide, I'm going to get into prevention? What was that path like?
Oh, you know what? I think I would describe it as somewhat eclectic. I had kind of a zigzaggy kind of pathway that I don't think I would have ever envisioned myself doing what I'm doing, and in the manner that I'm doing it. I was working in the city of Philadelphia as I was kind of in the corporate arena, actually working for the largest public utility in the city. And I think one of the catalysts, clearly one of the leading reasons that pointed me in this direction was the untimely and tragic death of a relative, actually a cousin of mine, who was tragically murdered because of issues related and relevant to the being mistaken for someone else that was in the drug trade. And so that sort of pointed me in the direction of a place in my heart that said something and someone needs to be able to respond to this in some way, shape, form, or fashion, and what it is that I can do, and how can I find out what I can do to make this better. And that put me on a path for getting engaged, getting involved with nonprofits that were working with troubled youth. It put me on the path of learning about organizations that were trying to make change in the city of Philadelphia on behalf of prevention. At that time, I was looking much more heavily into violence prevention and was doing a good bit of work around that. And that's what led me to establishing the Strong Foundation, in which put me kind of on a pathway to learning about prevention and learning that there was an actual science to what it is that we do, which then propelled me into positions and forming relationships with extraordinary leaders like David Hawkins and Enrico Catalano, who developed extraordinary platforms like the Communities That Care approach, which gave me my first opportunity to engage and translate the science of prevention for communities that I happen to be serving in the city of Philadelphia. And so that really was my on-ramp to this work that we're doing. And I worked for the mayor's office in Philadelphia for a length of time, and that allowed me to actually learn some of the craftsmanship behind what it is that we do. And if you really wanted to learn about community organizing, I couldn't have had a better learning path than to work in the city of Philadelphia in that way.
Well, it's interesting. When I ask this question, most of the time people kind of say, I'm paraphrasing, but kind of fell into this as a profession. And you know, I sometimes think that the reason I like asking this question is it kind of illustrates that prevention is still a burgeoning industry, if you will. It's evolving all the time. And I envision a day when people really look at prevention as a career path that's something that's sought after. And I wonder if you've kind of noticed that in the time that you've been doing this work. Most people just kind of come here for personal reasons. They have a family member or their own personal travel. But very seldom do people go, yeah, you know, I thought about being a prevention or doing this kind of community organizing when I was in junior high or something like that. And I think we're moving in that direction, but I still think it's time is coming.
Oh, I absolutely believe that we're moving in that direction, and I do agree with you. I think there actually has been an evolution in the way in which the prevention field is being viewed, the intentionality behind those of us who look at it as a profession, and the the expressed intent by those who are kind of leading prevention on behalf of the nation and really promoting this as a science and as a professional field in which we're looking to engage folks in this workforce. And so folks are beginning to look at this as a career opportunity in a way that I don't think I actually did when I first got into this field. I think I would fall into that category of, oh, I don't know. I was kind of wanting to make change and wanting to do some good and stumbling my way through that and coming into contact with those that were of like mind. And so, it kind of led me to where it is that we are today. But I don't think I saw this as a career option. I think it was a career option that saw me.
You're listening to Prevention Perk. The funder of this project, along with all the other products of the Mid-America PTTC, is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Although funded by SAMHSA, the content of this recording does not necessarily reflect the views of SAMHSA.
Talk to us a little bit about that history you had with CADCA, but I think that what's important is you not only went from CADCA, but you now run a successful consulting firm yourself. So that was a springboard to where you're at now. And I think it would be good I know a lot of people in the audience know who you are, but there are people that are meeting you for the first time. And I'd like for us to kind of illustrate how that path kind of presents itself in an individual's life.
My tenure at CADCA was extraordinary. And I really appreciated the opportunities that were provided and the amount that I was able to learn while there. And one of the things that I saw while having extraordinary opportunities like being able to work with every federal agency and help with strategic planning that they were doing, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA and CSAP, the Center for Substance Abuse Prevention, is I was able to see how communities not only needed support with learning about the expectations of these federal agencies and how to apply the tools that they have been provided through these federal agencies, but what is it that they could do in order to engage their constituents, their communities in this conversation of prevention in a way that was unique to their communities. And in 2017, there were a number of personal catalytic moments in my life. One being the health of my father, and the other being the introduction of grandchildren, uh, all happening at the same time, which really became priorities in a way that did not allow for me to continue with this wonderful role that I was playing at the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America. And so I had the opportunity of starting a consulting firm, which allowed me to engage with the work that I love, with the communities that I love, on behalf of the goals that we were all caring about. But to be able to do so in a way that also allowed me to attend to these new priorities that I had with caring for family. And so that's really what was the initiator of me um, starting CHC. But the extraordinary thing about it is that it allowed me to take these 25 plus years of experience and learning and apply it with communities in ways that I simply couldn't do when I was working on behalf of another entity, and to be able to do it with a flexibility that um, I was able to meet those communities exactly where they were, and am able to meet those communities exactly where they are, and be able to bring that level of expertise to them. And so it is an extraordinary adventure that I'm on, and a journey that I'm on that I'm highly grateful for.
You know, what's interesting is that as you kind of unpack that timeline is, I think you and I both know after having this experience, but I like speaking to an audience that this may be a new introduction to them, is prevention is never a one size fits all. And you kind of talk about that. You went to counties across America and you had all these opportunities to be in communities and kind of help them tailor their coalition initiatives to what the community needs. And in a sense, that's kind of where you're at with the role you have with your own firm now, is you've really been able to identify this need to just be fluid and flexible, and also at the same time be personal when you're in a different locale, because frankly, no two days are the same in prevention, and no two communities are going to respond exactly the same way. And I think that's the beauty of it all. And part of why I wanted to have a conversation with you, Carlton, was to kind of maybe touch a little bit on what's kind of the future of prevention, because you've illustrated very eloquently what the past has looked like, because you've, in a sense, grown up in it. But I think that one of the things you're working on now is a learning management system called Prevention Mastery, and that's kind of the future. I won't say that that's community building at its core, but COVID opened the door for us to get online and be virtual and get comfortable and learn and train and speak and present and all those things. And now seems to be a time to really take the learning to a new level. So I'm hoping that maybe you can talk a little bit about this prevention mastery and where you see it kind of going along the lines of the future of prevention.
Part of what I see, you asked about the future of prevention. And I've always been fascinated by the relationship, the symbiotic and often synergistic relationship between public health and prevention science. And we often speak of both in the context of the work that we do. But we sometimes, I believe, do a little bit of a disservice because we sometimes treat them as if they are separate tools, as if prevention is a tool of public health, or somehow public health is a tool of prevention, when in fact I believe there is some recognition of this necessity for both to be considered in the work and the role that we play with it. So both play a role with each other. And so I found that it's helpful to understand by looking at the definition. So there's this remarkable definition that was offered by the Institute of Medicine for what we actually want from public health, right? Public health is the collective action of a society in order to ensure the conditions in which everyone can be healthy, right? And so key terms there, the collective actions, ensuring that everyone plays a role in defining the conditions so that folks can be healthy. Well, that falls right in line with what I've tried to be a part of promoting, and it's kind of my framing for prevention in the 21st century. And that is that for me, prevention has to move beyond merely frameworks and the tools that we use and the tactics that we employ. But prevention is about identifying the most vulnerable in our population and where they are most vulnerable. In other words, identifying those environments that place them at greatest vulnerability, right? And our role in making those invisible vulnerabilities visible, right, is what I see the role of prevention in this 21st century, aligning right with public health, right? And so I see that there are two big needs or two big aspects of what is implied when you ask about the future of prevention, because I think that they're very much aligned with the future of public health, right? And I think that we learn from the history. Public health has evolved. Public health has been in place and been with us since the late 1800s, early 1900s, and has continued to evolve to a place that we have now. Prevention and what we define as prevention science has evolved over the last several decades in our nation, to the point where now I believe that there are two areas that really require our focus and really, for me, represent what is the future of prevention. And that is the need for us to focus on the professionalization of our field. In other words, how are we going to take all these tools and make sure that we have a workforce that is enabled and educated and being held accountable for employing these tools that we have now, because we now know more than we ever had before about what works for the advancement of public health in our society. And then the other aspect that I think is a huge there's a need for a huge focus upon is this idea of engagement, that we have to go beyond ourselves, beyond those who are already within and under the tent. We have to move beyond those of whom we're already engaged with in order to ensure that prevention is being done in a way that is really going to move the needle. Because I believe that that definition of prevention that I offered is really guided by three important values, right? Value number one is we fully believe that the best way to address any issue or any problem is to prevent that problem before it starts. Value number two is we believe in the full engagement and empowerment of the community and their role in both understanding that problem and being a part of solving that problem. And number three is we believe in being guided by science in order to produce population level change, right? Well, those three guiding values align directly with that definition of public health that I shared earlier. So, how can we ensure that that's taking place in a way that everyone is engaged in that kind of conversation? And so, I think up until now, the emphasis in prevention has really been upon what do we know works? How can we make sure that what works is what's being promoted? How can we make sure that what's work is being promoted and then adapted to meet the needs of varied communities, right? That's what we've done, right? Prevention has evolved over time. I know you probably remember when we were, really employing scare tactics and things like you know just and I think they all had their role and they all had their place, but we all know that there was a certain lack of it did not achieve the results that we were aspiring with respect to that. That it takes more than just a phrase. That it takes more than just um, 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 programs that we are attempting to implement. In my view, we now know so much. I remember when I started in this role of prevention, I believe that you can count with both hands. Probably, I think there were no more than 8 when I got started of what they would refer to as evidence-based practices or programs, right? 8, right? Well, now there are whole catalogs of evidence-based programs and practices, things that have been tested and proven to be effective when applied in the right context. We now know more than we ever have before. And so if public health is the way we go about doing this, public health says that, you know what, we define the problem, we identify those risks and factors and protective factors associated with the problem. We then think about a comprehensive set of strategies that we're able to apply and make sure that we're employing evidence-based programs, practices, and policies as we're doing that. But it goes beyond that. And it also suggests that if those things are going to work and work well, then you have to ensure that you are getting widespread adoption of that throughout the community. And so what that says to me is that there is a whole population of folks who ought to know what we know about prevention. And that really was the catalyst behind my getting together with an extraordinary partner of mine, a good friend of ours. I think you might have brought him up. I know we were talking about him earlier today, but Dave Clausen. So Dave Clausen and I came together and we looked at this problem of, of assuring that the best instruments, the best tools, the best information, the best knowledge of prevention is being provided in a way that is accessible to everyone. And how might we be able to do it? And just as prevention has evolved over time and public health has evolved over time, technology has evolved over time. And we now have the technology that really will allow for us to put prevention in the hands of everyone in a way that could have real effect and real impact. And that's where prevention mastery really came into being. Prevention mastery is a customizable online training and learning management system that is coupled with a suite of consultative services that were born out of my 25 plus years of experience in this field, so that we bring the latest, the best, the most cutting edge prevention knowledge and science and information, and employ it with the latest and cutting edge technology that allows folks to have the most engaging learning opportunity possible with that. And so that's where prevention mastery came from.
So the mastery, as you're unpacking that, it sounds to me, so it's more than just, I'll say, a learning management system, which is kind of an online. You can build a classroom or a tutorial or a teaching device of some sort, but then the wraparound with the identity of prevention mastery is an organization, a community, whatever, says we'd like to do X, Y, and Z in our community. You can then help them come in and figure out how to tailor this this product so that it has maximum impact in their community. Is that kind of how I'm hearing it?
What prevention mastery provides, in a way that no other service, to our knowledge, provides for the prevention field. It is unique in what it is that it does for the prevention field, is that a community can come to us and say, here's what we want. We want a suite of training tools and curricula to be provided and accessed. And we don't have a learning management system. And we don't have the courses. Well, Prevention Mastery provides the learning management system, and we can develop with the best subject matter experts in the field of prevention. I'm very, very proud of the cadre of subject matter experts that we have to help with being able to address whatever the specific or particular needs are of any given community that we come with. A community may come to us and say, hey, we already have a number of courses that we've done. We've been doing this Zoom thing for a while now, and we have a number of webinars that we've done, and we'd like to turn those into online courses, but we want that online courses to be much more engaging and interactive than a typical webinar presentation would be. Can you help us? And yes, we can. We can take all of that and translate that into a suite of training modules that will be able to be on your own customized learning management portal and system that will allow your community or your constituents or your coalition members to have access to the kind of courses that you want in a way that is highly interactive for the learner.
So it's not just skill building in a sense. I mean, it's really skill building is at the core of it, but you're really talking about being able to engage community, because if you've got 10 or 15 people gather around the table, engaging in a coalition, that's effective. But if they're not really learning skills and engaging in a broader sense with the materials that are available, they're not only advancing the coalition, they're not really advancing the community. So you're kind of bringing the human element of engagement into the realm of skill building, like in a digital form.
It's not only high tech; it's high touch. That's the distinction. That's the difference. And that's just born out of my experience in working with communities all across the nation. Every community required a high degree of touch with that community in order to apply the concepts and the tools and the theories and the frameworks that we were trying to offer. Right? So Prevention Mastery was created with that high tech meets high touch in mind, and what I'll also share is that it provides a way for us to do where I believe the future of prevention is right now. So I shared with you the two aspects that I believe are vitally important in this 21st century of prevention. One is the professionalization of our field, right? And so prevention mastery meets the needs of that. And one great example is that we are working with states like the state of Kentucky, and helping prevention mastery is helping provide the opportunity for their entire training and technical assistance infrastructure to utilize this as a way of building their capacity, and then they are utilizing it to engage the broader members of their community. And that's what I'm talking about, moving outside of our tent, right? So there are those that are within our tent that are already receiving that information. But then if we're really going to be effective, what Kentucky really understands is that we have to reach outside of the tent. We have to bring the community members in and provide them with the same kind of information in a way that is friendly to them. It meets them where they are. It speaks in their language. It allows them to engage as they want to engage on demand, on their time schedule, on their time frame. And their time frame. And so it is a wonderful vehicle for that. Or a national organization like the Drug Free America Foundation, which employs prevention mastery in order to allow for them to disseminate workplace workplace policies, learning and training to the nation, and state level organizations that have brought us in to do the same. In other words, prevention mastery can be applied in whichever way you need it to be applied to meet the needs of those that you are trying to serve. And that was the whole impetus of doing it. We didn't do it because there was a need for yet another learning management system. There are a whole boatload of learning management systems out there. But what we were finding is that our folks were going and purchasing a learning management system. And while they knew prevention, they didn't really know the ins and outs of how to make that learning management system work for them very, very well, right? And so it's almost like trying to fit a round peg into a square hole, right? And so with a lot of effort, you can make something happen. And I've seen some of those experiences. On the other hand, you have folks that have a learning management system, or were attempting to get a learning management system, but they don't have the expertise to actually develop the courses that they were interested in providing to their folks. What we provide at Prevention Mastery is from A to Z, from soup to nuts. You come to us with your needs, and we're able to take care of whatever your needs are once we have a consultation with you. And we can do as much or as little as you need in that regard. So there was not a need for another LMS, another learning management system, but there was a need to have an opportunity for the prevention field to have something that was created distinctly and uniquely for the prevention field.
Well, this is kind of exciting, and I'll be sure and we'll include a link in the show notes so people can connect with you after we've had this conversation. And it's, I mean, I've got 15 different questions. This is exciting because it sparks new and innovative ideas that I think have implications across the board. But I think that one of the things that I'm curious about, because you've illustrated really well the public health model and the kind of the umbrella, and we're moving prevention, and all of this is kind of coming together, so to speak. And now you have this delivery mechanism for high tech, high touch kind of engagement. Aside from that kind of moving forward in the realm of the future for prevention, do you see other trends that are coming up? And there are talking points, like you could say harm reduction, or you could say making sure that communities are doing evidence-based practices, or making sure that they're, those kinds of things that really they're important and we need to have those. But then I also sometimes wonder, we were really good at identifying the latest drug trend or identifying the impact that drugs have, but really moving, and I don't mean to dismiss it, but really moving the needle beyond that to be inclusive, but still carry it forward. So do you see kind of a trend or a future where some things are going to, I don't know, shift or change compared to the way we've been doing it? Like reefer madness would not be effective in today's world. And that was, 75 years ago or whatever it was. But they believed it worked then. And we've believed what you've described already was working through the, 80s, 90s, and today. Where do you see that pushing us in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are several things going on now. We are at a point of transition, I think, not just as a nation, but I think even globally. And as a result of that, things such as the conversations that we're having regarding legalization and the movement for legalization, which is now and has always been rather the movement of commercialization and the implications of that to the health and well-being of our communities and societies and our community, our prevention professionals and coalitions trying to contend with that changing dynamic is one of those trends. The notion of equity and the importance of equity and how the greater focus that we're applying to equity is another, I hate to say, I call it an emerging trend, because the fact of the matter is that there have been a number of us, a huge number of us, who have been advocating and voicing those needs and trying to speak to those needs and represent those needs for a very, very long time. That being said, it is factual that there is a greater degree of focus and intention from the highest levels of the prevention infrastructure and leadership, really making equity a priority for the prevention field to consider in a way that the prevention field has not considered or had not considered before. But one thing that I'd like to offer about that, and it really goes to the earlier point that I was making about kind of where I see the two real areas of need are for the future of our field, right? I've already talked somewhat at length about the need for a focus and an emphasis on the professionalizing of our field. But the other area is this area of engagement, right? And I've referred to it as reaching beyond the tent, so to speak. In a real sense, that's also at the heart of the equity conversations that we're having now in the field. I think that much of the current conversations that we're having in the field of prevention around equity are essential, important, valuable, yet I don't believe go far enough or are complete. We focus a lot on the fairness of the conversation. We focus a lot on the aspect of justice, right? But equity is about more than fairness and justice, right? It's more than making a wrong right, which is where much of the conversation, focus and intent is. All of that is vital and all of that is important. But at its core, equity is about engagement. It is about including the insight, the input, the intelligence, the intellect, the contribution of those whom are not a part of the conversation. And so it puts a spotlight on areas where our field has to be much more thoughtful, intentional, strategic about engaging with our broader populations, wherever they are, whomever they are. And that falls right in line with the earlier conversation and definition that I provided for prevention, which is all about the focus of prevention ought to be identifying the most vulnerable within our populations and where those vulnerabilities are, and making both very blatantly obvious. I tell the story about the fact that we became grandparents very recently, and when I go to my children's home to visit my grandchildren, I find that in their home they have this grate at the top of the stairway, and I can't navigate the steps, even though I have a couple of degrees. I can't figure out how to open up the dog thing, right? And all of these areas within the home that don't allow immediate access. Why? Because in the context of that environment, they made sure that they prioritize not me as an adult, they prioritize the most vulnerable within that population. That's what the equity conversation and prevention is truly about. And again, I'm going to bring it back to what I think and why I think prevention mastery is just one tool that we have to help our field better engage in these two very important areas, professionalization and high engagement, is because it helps to provide access to information that you typically are getting only if you're a part of our club, right? Only if you're within the tent of prevention. We know the conferences that we go to. We know the specialized trainings and where they are and how to access them. But if we don't find a way of taking that information and being able to diffuse and disseminate that information in a way that it is accessible by the school teacher or by the local business owner or by the faith leader within their community, in their context, in their own way, in their own manner, then we aren't being as effective as we ought to be in really disseminating prevention and prevention science so that everybody understands what their role in it is. When anybody goes to my grandchildren's home, they immediately understand what their role is in relationship to the prevention mechanisms that are put in place, right? And we adjust. We recognize that these things, while they may be an inconvenience, while it may not be exactly something that I can appreciate for myself, I understand the importance of it. I think the same is applicable to what it is that we're trying to do within our society, which brings me back to that definition of public health, which is my guide, the collective actions of a society to ensure the conditions in which everyone can be healthy.
Because prevention is just saying we want to do what's good for the community's health. And so I think what you're driving at here is really a community adoption of what you and I and hundreds, if not thousands of other people have been driving at for a very long time. And it's time to arrive and say, let's do this thing. But we don't really have all the components yet to drive it home for the community to go, I'm with you, Carlton. I'm with you, Steve. We're ready to really take this serious because it's the only place that prevention has to go. It can't go backwards. We can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can't move the baby gate off the stairs. We have to do these things. We just have to try and learn a way to deliver it to the community for maximum benefit. That's what I think is impressing me about how you're describing prevention mastery is it really gives the tool, the community, a chance to build a tool that works directly in their own, on their own turf.
That is it exactly. Right now, I would suggest that the dominant paradigm is that when a community wants to learn more about the science of prevention, that typically happens through the vehicle of either a local provider or prevention provider or agency or a local prevention coalition. But that group then has some access to some entity that is providing that information, providing that education, right? And so that small group of people then go someplace to get some information, and then they bring that information back, right? But it's a very difficult thing to move from that to actually disseminating that information to the public at large, right? What we're wanting to do is to flip the paradigm and say, you, as the local entity, can be the vehicle of education on behalf of your public, right? And so every community can have access to a learning management tool that they can then offer to their own constituents wherever they are. And that learning could take place in the way, in the manner, in the language of that local group. So you don't have to say, Miss Smith, if you want to know about prevention, you have to go all over here and you have to sign up for this thing over here that you can then go to that everybody else is going to. No, Mrs. Smith can access the information in her own time if you had access to prevention mastery. And so for me, it is essential for us to be able to democratize capacity building and training transfer in a way that can make sense, that the community can then own the capacity building responsibility that it has for their communities.
You're listening to Prevention Perk. Did you know SAMHSA has a newly established Center of Excellence on Social Media and Well-Being? The purpose of this program is to establish, develop, and disseminate information, guidance, and training on the impact of children and youth social media use. There is a link in the show notes to this valuable resource.
I do have one singular question I want to ask before we get away, and it's that kind of that pay it forward kind of thing, because you're bringing a lot of experience, a lot of passion, and a lot of vision to this discussion and to your work, and to the field of prevention. But what's that one thing, like paying it forward? The audience needs to know this. Maybe we haven't covered it. Maybe we've covered it and you want to reiterate and say, this is what the audience needs to do. If you could say, of all things, this is it.
Understand that prevention is more than a science. Prevention is a craft. And if we're going to be serious about moving the needle at the population level for and on behalf of our communities, we have to make that craft accessible to everyone. And part of what it is that I'm employing folks to do is to consider, how can we raise the level of our state of play? If we continue to do the same things, we will continue to get the same result. We're looking to try to be disruptive in that way and in that regard. And part of what it is that I hope folks hear and get through this is my passion for really wanting to bring about change. Just the other day, I was with an extraordinary champion in North Carolina, a remarkable woman by the name of Miss Lydia Jones. And Miss Lydia Jones lost her son tragically, similarly to the way I lost my cousin. and she lost her son 10 years ago. And what she has done within that 10 years is she decided she was going to make a difference in this community that is a remarkable community, yet it's a community with many, many challenges. And she, along with others in her community, decided to create an opportunity for change and to organize and to bring folks together to be able to help address those issues and address those challenges. And what she recognized and what I was so honored by is the opportunity of bringing to this community this hero within that community that I have inordinate respect for. The tools of this field in a way that was customized and tailored for her community, that she felt empowered by and felt like, you know what, we can do this now. And that it was her energy and their energy that was able to do it. So my call to action is for folks to really get that this craftsmanship of prevention is something that is achievable and necessary for everyone in your community, and you have the tools and the capacity by which you're able to bring it. So give us a call.
Carlton, it's been delightful. I have had so much fun. I hope that in your schedule someday we can have you come back and we'll spend another time period going through a whole different conversation. But I'm sure we'll find plenty that we can share about that because you've got a wealth of experience, and I appreciate you sharing that with the audience here at Mid-America PTTC.
Steve, thank you for the honor of the conversation, and thank you for all you do on behalf of our country. You're a tremendous resource, and thank you for bringing your voice, your unique voice, to this field. It's been an honor, my friend.
Thank you for listening to Prevention Perk, a podcast from Mid-America PTTC. To learn more about our innovations, visit pttcnetwork.org and look under Your PTTC for the Mid-America link. Remember, prevention is better together, and together we are stronger.